Today I want to talk about a good process for finding new oil paint colors. Once you get to a point where you feel like you have most of the common and popular ones covered, if you're an artist like me, then you enjoy exploring different colors and trying out new pigments. And lately I've been on a single pigment color quest where I've just been looking across the different color categories and trying to identify single pigment colors that I've never tried before. So I want to step through my process, and then while I'm doing that, I'll call out some specific examples, and then I'll share 16 or so colors that I've come across recently through this process. And the goal is just to help artists to have a little bit more of a strategy behind picking out those colors as you broaden your palette. So as far as the process goes, I rely on two main resources. The first one is artistcreation.com, and this lists all the different pigments and you can look at them by color category. And then the second resource is paintlist.com. So what I do is I go to Artist Creation, and then if I pick a color category like blue, for example, it has three sections. The first one is going to be NA. I don't worry about that. Those are pigments from the past that are not really applicable. The next section is N, the natural pigments. I might glance through that out of curiosity, but for the most part, I'm focused on the pigments that start with P. So I'll go down that list with whichever ones are listed, and then I'll look them up in paintlist.com. And once you plug in that pigment code, then you'll be able to see what brands currently offer it and then the name of it. And you'll be able to see which ones are single pigment versus the ones that are blends. So now that I've identified a pigment code and I've looked at it in Paintlist, then I'll compare it to a list that I have of all of the colors that I've acquired since I started painting. And if I have it, that's great. Then I move on to the next one. But if I don't, then I'll scrutinize a little bit more. What are the brands that offer it? Do they have something that's single pigment? If I find one that looks interesting, then I add it to my list and I know that it's a gap that I have. Now, of course, I appreciate that there are going to be pigments that are extremely similar, so it might not be accurate to say gap, but I at least definitively know that I don't have a color that includes that exact pigment code. Now, a couple quick disclaimers. You are going to find situations where you grab a pigment code from Artist Creation, you plug it into Paintlist, and there are currently no paint brands that use that pigment. You're going to find some scenarios where you'll plug that pigment code in and it's used, but only as part of a mixture. Typically for those, I just move on. I'm really, at this point, just looking for single pigment colors. You're going to find scenarios where you plug in a pigment code into paintlist.com and maybe only two brands offer it, but those brands are hard to come by depending on where you live and where you order your paints from. You could find scenarios where you plug in the code, it lists a couple colors from different brands, and it's discontinued. A good example of that would be PB33 or manganese blue. As far as I can tell, you just can't get it anymore. And then finally, you're going to plug in some where you find a couple brands that offer it, but it's a rare pigment that most brands don't use, so it can be very expensive. An example of that would be PB30, which is copper carbonate, and Rublev makes a pale azurite with that pigment, but it is expensive. So there will be some instances where you find a pigment and there are brand limitations, it's only used as part of a mixture, or it's just expensive to the point where it might not be worth it. Now, all of that said, over the course of the last month or two, I've been going and plugging in the different pigment codes that I don't have and listing the paint color and then the corresponding brand. And then when it comes time to choose new colors, I just refer to that list. I find something that I haven't tried yet. And again, at least I know I'm getting a pigment that I haven't used before. Okay, so now I just want to share some examples of colors that I got recently using this process. And what I'll do is put them on a palette so you can see what they actually look like. and then I'll share the name and the pigment code, and I'll just note if it's a color that I've initially been impressed with that people might want to consider, or if it's very similar to some of those popular common colors that most artists are already using. Okay, the first color that we're going to look at is yellow benzimidazolone. It's pigment PY154. The pigment itself is benzimidazolone yellow 154. And this one is a bright, clean, middle to slightly greenish yellow. It has medium tinting strength. It's non-toxic, and it's a good primary yellow. The next one is bismuth vanadate, and that one is PY184. The pigment is bismuth vanadate yellow. And this one is a good non-toxic alternative to cadmium yellow lemon. It's a bright, light lemon yellow with greenish undertones. It has good tinting strength and strong light fastness. Just to warn you, there are quite a few yellows here. I must have been really in that zone lately. The next one is Citron, and it's pigment code PY175. That pigment is another benzimidazolone, but this one is yellow H6G. So this one's also from the benzimidazolone family, but it's a cool lemon citrus yellow. It's a little bit greener than the more neutral PY154 over there. And this one is transparent to semi-transparent depending on the brand. Next we have Hansa Yellow Medium, and this one is PY97. And that pigment is diarylide yellow FGL. This one's a middle primary yellow with high chroma. It's kind of a bright light mid-shade yellow. Next we have Mars Yellow, and it's PY42. That pigment is yellow iron oxide. This one is chemically related to the natural yellow ochre, which is PY43, and it's an intense, warm, ochreous yellow with higher chroma and stronger tinting power than the more natural ochres, and it's opaque and has excellent light fastness. The next one is Steel de Grand, and it's PY110. This one's a reddish orange leaning transparent yellow with high chroma. Excellent light fastness. This one has good tinting strength and it works well for glazing. And this one's a contemporary substitute for NY14, which is Steel de Grand Lake, which is typically made from buckthorn berries. And I thought it was kind of interesting that currently you can go out and you can get a limited edition 1930s retro Steel de Grand that's labeled as NY13 from Schmincke Mussini. You'd have to get a small 15 milliliter, but if you are inclined to get the version that's from the natural source and the buckthorn berries, you could theoretically do that, at least last I checked. And I really like this color with the Steel de Grand. Next we have another one that I really like. This is Genuine Naples Yellow. It's PY41, and that's the Naples Yellow pigment. And this is one of the oldest synthetic pigments. It's bright to ochreous yellow, medium tinting strength. It's really dense. It has a heavy feel, and just beware, of course, that the genuine versions are highly toxic. This contains lead and antimony, so you need to be careful with it. It's maybe hard to see and it's hard to articulate, but there's something that's really interesting about Naples Yellow. The next one is Scheveningen Orange. That's the name of the color, but the pigment is PO73, which is Pyrrole Orange. And this one's an intense high chroma reddish orange, has a strong tinting strength. It's a little bit less opaque than cadmium, but it's non-toxic. Next one is Orange Sunset, and it's PO34, and that pigment is pyrazolone orange. This is a bright, warm, glowing reddish orange. It has high tinting strength. The thing to note on this one is the light fastness is probably not as good. It's typically rated as moderate or low. especially in tints. You can have some problems, but I think it can vary between brands, and a lot of the testing that I saw was done on watercolors. The next one is orange molybdate. This is PR 104, so technically it's a red pigment, but it's the molybdate orange pigment, and this one is a bright, opaque, reddish orange inorganic pigment, strong tinting strength. This is another one kind of like the Naples yellow that has a dense, heavy feel, but it's another one that's highly toxic because it contains lead, so you need to be very careful with this one. But so far I've been very impressed. I really like this color with the orange molybdate. The next one is quinacridone coral. This is PR 209, and that pigment is quinacridone red. This one is a warm pinkish red with coral orange undertones. I'll try to thin it out to see if you can see that. This one's transparent, high chroma, excellent light fastness and high tinting strength, and this one is non-toxic. Next we have vermilion extra. This one is PR 255, which is a Pyrrole Scarlet. This one's an intense high chroma orange red, excellent light fastness, strong tinting strength, semi-opaque, non-toxic, and this is a good alternative to cadmium scarlet or cadmium light red, and it's slightly yellower and warmer than the PR 254, which is the Pyrrole red. Now we have a Pyrrole crimson. This one is PR 264, and the pigment itself is Pyrrole red rubine, which is a deep red. And this is kind of a dark, almost bluish crimson, high chroma, good tinting strength, typically semi-transparent to transparent. And this is a good alternative to alizarin crimson, which is PR 83. And sometimes artists have concerns about the light fastness of alizarin crimson. So if you're looking for an alternative, Pyrrole crimson PR 264 might be a good option for you. Next we have perylene crimson. This one is pigment 179, and that pigment is perylene maroon. This is a dark, rich red with cool undertones, and this one is also excellent light fastness, strong tinting strength. It's a good modern organic for deep reds, shadows, glazing. And this one mixes to near black with phthalo green. And I've really found myself reaching for this one, so I do really like the perylene crimson. Next we have violet hematite, and this is PR 102. The pigment is natural red iron oxide, and this is a very purple or violet leaning red earth. Again, it's PR 102, so technically a red, but this one is fully opaque, high tinting strength, good light fastness, and you can find a lot of other colors with PR 102, and my understanding is the particle size can influence the violet bias in the color. Just a few more. This one is Caribbean blue, and it's PB16, and that's heliogen blue for the pigment, or a phthalo turquoise. This one's an intense greenish blue turquoise leaning cyan, and this one's really dark in mass tone, and then it can change when it's thinned out a bit with the undertones or with the tint. I might add a little white to it real quick just to show you. I really like this one too. So again, this one's PB16 Caribbean blue. Next we have indanthrene blue, which is PB60. And the pigment for this one is indanthrone blue. And this one's a deep, warm, almost reddish to violet blue. And this one's pretty dark, a little bit more muted than an ultramarine blue or a phthalo. It's not as overpowering in mixtures as phthalos are. And this one has excellent light fastness. And then the last one we'll squeeze down here, and this one is Cobalt Blue Deep, which is PB74, and that pigment is Cobalt Zinc Silicate Blue. And this one's typically darker, warmer, a little bit more violet reddish leaning than the standard Cobalt Blue. And it has moderate tinting strength, excellent light fastness, but this one does contain cobalt and zinc. Okay, that was a quick look at 18 of the different colors that I picked out recently using this process. If you're an artist who likes to wing it and get whatever, that's totally fine. Or if you're an artist who prefers to stick with more popular common colors for your palette, that's great too. But if you like to experiment and try different things and you were looking for a little bit more strategic approach to it, hopefully using those resources and putting together a little bit of a tracker helps you out like it did for me. If you made it through this video, I sincerely appreciate it, and more to come soon.